Recently, a dark comedy has taken Netflix by storm. Releasing 7 episodes on April 11th, 2024, Baby Reindeer is a black comedy starring Richard Gadd and Jessica Gunning, as well as Nava Mao and Tom Goodman Hill. The story follows Donnie Dunn, a quite sad-looking bartender and aspiring comedian, and his journey of being groomed and assaulted by a man early into his career, and later being stalked by what seems like a harmless customer at his job. I've gotta say, as a watcher and a reader of a lot of horror and quite disturbing content, it was this short black comedy that broke me in my old ass age. Not any of the gore I watch or read, anything like that, but this black comedy with emotional moments that have you coming to terms with really bad moments in your past. By episode 2, old trauma and unconfronted memories were flooding back. I took a wee bit of a break, but I came back days later to finish it. After I finished it, I quickly browsed on the subreddit, and it seems that many people have had similar experiences. Now, I find the human experience to be a fascinating one, in that we're all simultaneously living the best and worst days of our lives beside each other. We are transfixed by the pain of others, quite possibly because it resembles the pain we feel every day. The comfort of knowing that we're all in it. In the beginning, we sort of have a hard time understanding why Donnie is the way that he is, allowing people to constantly mistreat him, allowing his stalker to constantly cross boundaries, taking so long to report this to the police. This sort of mirroring the way that society views victims after something terrible has happened to them. We ask, what did you do to deserve this? As if the question can always be summed up with a simple answer. The reality is, no one is the perfect victim. And the realization that there are people out there who can sniff out your traumas like bloodhounds and use you for their own selfish gain is a painful one. Confronting the knowledge that you could have ended something that hurt you multiple times, but instead you end up back at your abuser's house days later. I'm an adult now, almost a decade out of the beginning of a pretty abusive situation, and this series reminded me of old wounds that were still there, pain that I've brushed aside and put in a box in my subconscious somewhere. I obviously have done therapy in the past, but it seems like this one situation is one that has been really hard for me to just accept and come to terms with. Constantly finding different ways to blame myself, essentially, for what someone else did to me when I was in a pretty vulnerable state. And I find that a lot of us are kind of bonding through these traumas in these subreddits and all of these discussion boards where we're all picking apart little sections of this series that may have been poking at parts of our psyche that haven't been healed yet. I think that in many ways, this is why Baby Reindeer works. There is a lot to be said about people that have devoted a lot of time and effort into relationships where they were being abused, and they didn't realize it until after. Now, I'm not going to say that my experience is a one-to-one comparison to what happened to Richard, which, if you didn't already know, Richard Gadd, the person who plays Donnie, actually went through this in real life. So when I think about the ending and the way that he is preparing himself to go confront Darian, the person who raped him and drugged him multiple times over, when he goes to his place and he thinks that he's going to finally put some peace behind what happened to him, but instead he ends up wrapped in his abuser again in the form of a job offer. It shows us that this isn't something that only has happened to us. I went back to someone who abused and cheated and played around with my sexual health for a very long time. I am positive that there were people in my life who would look at me and think that I'm crazy because I'm constantly going back to someone who not only has mentally and emotionally abused me, They have literally put my health at risk. Why am I still going back? And the answer is that in many ways, Donnie answers this in the show when he says, you kind of want validation from your abuser. You want to impress them. You want to show them that you mean something. But at the end of the day, you hate yourself more than you love the situation that you're in. It's kind of like some part of you is telling you that you don't deserve love. You're not deserving of real effort and care. The only thing that you are worth is this constant abuse. That's how I felt during those years when I was being treated like shit. I felt like I didn't deserve anything better. And I love this show for triggering me, but also showing me that I'm much more healed than I ever thought that I would be at this point in my life. I think that a lot of us carry our trauma around like a suitcase. I use this as a saying for my friends often when we're going through things. I try to tell them that the baggage they're carrying is too heavy. They need to lighten the load. And while this unearthed a lot of trauma for me, I think it made me realize that humans are much more resilient than we give them credit for. I am much more resilient than I ever gave myself credit for, because I never pictured myself sitting here and talking about it, albeit I am kind of sidestepping it. I'm not really giving many details because at the end of the day, what's that gonna do for me? It's not gonna do much. I wanted to make this video not for views or anything. I wanted to make it for myself because I think this journey for me has been so uncomfortable, very long, but also it revealed a lot of truth about myself to myself. And I've gotta say, man, I give myself props for having gone through this. And I think that all of you out there who are seeing yourself in Donnie's story, who are seeing yourself in these experiences, you're not alone. And I want you to know that you're gonna get through this. Some days are going to be harder than others, most definitely. I still have days where I kind of wake up and blame myself for what I allowed to happen, but it's okay. Healing isn't linear, and you're gonna make it one day, but we're all gonna make it one day. I think a lot of times what has been hard for me is the fact that no one is the perfect victim. I feel like a lot of times we want to take accountability for the things that we did because we have agency over our actions. I have a hard time blaming the person who hurt me because of that fact. I feel like if I didn't want any of these things to happen to me, I wouldn't have constantly put myself in that situation over and over again. But it's not until years later that I realize you were trying to survive in a situation that you thought you had under control, but in reality, it was off the rails and you needed help to get out of that. It wasn't until I was able to talk to people about the experience and see their reactions at what was essentially abuse, mental abuse. It wasn't until then that I was able to realize that pain was being inflicted on me, and the same agency that I was using as an excuse or as a reason to blame myself, I could also use that to get out of the situation. And seeing it on screen, albeit to a much higher degree, obviously, I just think that this series has done a service for a lot of people who have been through trauma and didn't know how to put it into words or how to explain it to the people around them who maybe didn't understand. And it's something that I have had a hard time putting into words. There's a lot that I have wanted to say on the internet about the things that I've been through that I just haven't been able to, and I swear it's kind of stifling the way I come off. I have this persona that I put on when I make videos online, and I realized through this show that a lot of us do that. It's a defense mechanism of sorts. Once you have allowed someone to see the unfiltered version of you and they turn around and stab you in the back with it, it kind of makes you not want to ever show anyone who you are ever again. So to see that portrayed on screen by the person who actually went through all these things, it hit something. it hit something within me. And I think that that was his goal with this series. And if it was, well, buddy, bullseye for you. Yeah. In some sections of this, I was honestly speechless, and I felt like I needed to run away. I needed to leave the room because I felt like I was being seen by this show. And that's why Baby Reindeer works. I feel like this unabashed portrayal of his trauma is one of the most authentic that I've seen in a long time. Because to look so deeply inward that you're able to not only tell the story of your trauma, but show all of the instances where you may have opened yourself up to it. It's happened to a lot of us, and the shame of that has just kept us from admitting to ourselves that yes, we may have fucked up multiple times, but we didn't deserve that. And yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling about this show now, and you should go watch it. If you haven't already, go watch Baby Reindeer on Netflix, okay? And have a nice day. Thanks for listening to me ramble and be very, very vulnerable in front of a camera. I'm gonna go hide now. Bye.